Welcome to Brave Conversations, where real stories lead to brave moves. I'm Barbie Armenta, storyteller, speaker, realtor, and guide for women navigating midlife transitions. If you're standing at a crossroads, wondering what's next, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Brave Conversations. I want to tell you about a porch swing. Not just any porch swing, but my porch swing. The one that hung on the front porch of a little house in a neighborhood called Savannah. Because if there is any one single object that captured that season in my life, it was that swing. That's where I processed, that's where I prayed, that's where I sat and watched my boys on their skateboards yelling, "Mom, watch." And here's what I learned about that mom watch moment. The second they knew they were watching, they missed that trick every single time. But some things are only possible when no one is performing. And that season in Savannah, it taught me that. But let me back up, because to understand the Savannah house, you have to understand where I was coming from. If you've been with me from the beginning of this podcast, then you know 2 marriages, 3 boys, 2 divorces, and a life that looked nothing like the one I had planned. When I found myself starting over again, this time as a single mom of 3 boys, I did what I always did when I felt uncertain. I went to realtor.com. I know that might sound funny, but if you've been a person who finds possibility in houses, then you understand. I wasn't just browsing listings. I was looking for my next chapter. And then I kept seeing these houses, these little houses with sidings and big front porches and these dormer windows on the roof, a neighborhood I had never heard of, and it was called Savannah. But I couldn't stop looking at them. Was just something about these houses that just spoke to me. The character, the charm, they felt like homes and not just houses. And I remember thinking, this is where I need to be. Now, let me be honest about something. Buying that house was terrifying. I was doing it alone for the first time in my life. There was no partner, no second income, and not one person to split the decision with. Just me, my boys, and a faith that was still being formed. There was this particular kind of courage that was required to sign on that dotted line, to say, I can do this, I will do this, and I'll be okay. And I did. I bought that house on my own. And I want you to hear that that's not to boast, but it's a testimony, because I wasn't sure I could do it, and I did it anyway. And that is a brave move. That house was everything I had hoped for. It was 2 stories. It had the big front porch. It had the balcony off of the boys' rooms that opened right onto it. It had the 3 dormer windows across the roof line that I had wanted. And the very first thing I added was a porch swing, because of course I did. And that swing became a place for my morning coffee, for evening prayers, for long conversations with God about what on earth was happening in my life. My boys would spill out of the house with their skateboards in hand, and there I'd be on the swing. Mom, watch, clatter, crash, miss every time. But here's the thing. Those were some of the happiest moments of my life. The chaos, the noise, the aliveness of raising those boys that were resilient, boys that were funny, boys that kept getting back up on the board and trying again every time. I didn't know it then, but they were teaching me something. But really, the neighborhood itself was a gift. We had the best neighbors, the kind who show up, the ones who check on you, who become family without you even realizing what's happening. We fished in the pond. We walked the neighborhood in the evenings. On the 4th of July, everyone came outside. On Halloween, every neighbor was out on the streets. The neighborhood gathered. And for a woman who had just come out of a season where home felt like anything but safe, the feeling of being held by a neighborhood was everything. I didn't need the perfect life. I needed people, and Savannah gave me that. Now, I also want to be honest about the hard parts, because this podcast isn't about the highlight reel. There were days in that house where the power got turned off. My boys would come home from school and the lights wouldn't come on, and I'd have to scramble to get it all handled. Mitchell actually wrote a paper at school entitled Lights On, Lights Off. They took it all in stride. It wasn't funny in the moment, but we made it funny, because what else do? You make it a story. And here's what I know. Those moments, the inconvenient, the embarrassing, and the this is not how I planned it moments, those are the ones that shaped my boys. Not the perfect Christmases, not the beautiful house, the nights when mom figured it out anyway. The nights when we laughed instead of cried. The nights when we learned that we're going to be okay. that season also deepened my faith in ways that I did not expect. I had been in scripture for a few years by then, but in Savannah, the word came personal in a new way because I was alone in a way I'd never been alone before. Not lonely, I want to be clear about that, but alone with God in a way that only happens when you stop filling the silence. I had no one to lean on but him, and here's what I found, that he was enough. John 10:10 kept coming back to me in that season, that I have come that you may have life and have it abundantly. Abundantly. Not after you get your life together, not after you stop making mistakes, not after you have a partner or a plan. Now, in this moment, even on the nights when the power was off, even in the mornings on the porch swing when I didn't know what tomorrow looked like, even in that sacred, ordinary chaos of raising boys alone, there was abundance in that season, and I just had to learn to see it. And then, unexpectedly, someone new entered the story. I wasn't looking, well, not exactly. I had 3 boys, a job, a house I was trying to figure out how to keep, and a faith that was still taking root. But spring break was coming, and the boys would be with their dad. And I had quit online dating, but right on time, an email for a 7-day free trial to Yahoo Personals. I mean, what could it hurt? I met someone, and the way he showed up in my life was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. His name was Richard. And that story, the long, complicated, beautiful story of what happened next, is going to take its own episode to tell because it's that kind of story. What I want to leave you with is this. The Savannah years were not a chapter I would have chosen. Divorce, starting over, doing it alone. But they were sacred. There is something that happens in the seasons where you have no choice but to stand on your own 2 feet, where you discover that those feet were steadier than you thought, that your faith is deeper than you knew, that the capacity for joy is bigger than your circumstances. That season built something in me, a confidence that I hadn't had before, a clarity about who I was and what I was made of, a home, an actual home that I chose, that I bought and made beautiful all on my own, and my boys on their skateboards who kept getting back up. The hard seasons are not wasted seasons. Sometimes they're the most sacred seasons of all.
Brave conversation.